Periscope, it's Laura. How you doing? Welcome replay viewers, welcome live viewers. I haven't been on that much lately because I have been getting a new internet set up and I've been getting new, I got a new phone. I got a new Wi-Fi. Hi, Queen Roo. I got a lot of things fixed up. I got a new setup for sketching. So now I'm here to answer your questions. If you have any questions to work on today, let me just try. I didn't pick a specific topic in case anyone showed up and had questions, but otherwise I'm gonna take off on something. I'm Laura Bopentesta. I'm a fashion illustrator and designer. I've been teaching at Parsons in New York City for 20 years, and I love bringing out the voice and the ideas and the creative abilities in people who, especially people who think they don't have them. That's the biggest thrill of all, because it's in there. It's like if you love this stuff, all that feeling that motivated you to come, to study, to learn, to ask, all that motivation that makes you love it. Hi, darling. That's the love, and that's what fuels everything else. So you know what? You could have a whole bunch of skill with no love, and I think that kind of falls flat. If you recognize it, then you have the ability to interpret it. But sometimes most of us have a lot of unlearning to do in the area of arts. A lot of us are blocked by myths about how art happens and what it is, and that can really, really work against us in realizing our dreams. So if nobody asks questions, today I think I'm going to pull out this big file of sketches I have of technical drawings from a job I did in at Target years ago. But I'm here too if anyone has specific questions. It could be anything. Figure drawing is my big passion. Since I was a little girl, I loved looking at pictures of dancers. And to this day, let me flip around. Movement is a big thing for me. And energy and vitality. I love to dance. I'm a musician too. So I'm very much into fashion illustrations with a lot of with movement. So, and all kinds of media, usually watercolor media, but I also use the iPad. Sometimes I do apps, demonstration about apps. Oh, that's funny. I was just looking at this picture on Instagram and I wanted to sketch it on the iPad. Oops, I just lost it. Oh, well. Oh, that's interesting. Here's another really cool one of a fabric being hand woven in Eastern Nigeria, in Igbo. So anyway, I love Instagram. It's an amazing way to do research, because when you find something you love, you can usually find tags and other people who are interested in the same things and similar things, and you start to get like a whole network of great posts that you can, and people that you want to follow and stuff. So does anyone have specific questions today? No? I have 20% on my battery, so I'm going to take this scope, as long as I can. I do have a plug, actually, that I can get also. This is my timer, because one of the things I'm going to often advise you to do, especially with model drawing, is to use a timer so that you don't overwork your drawings to do let yourself do quick sketches. Not as some kind of torture, not as some kind of a mean thing I do to make you nervous, but as something that lets you work on a drawing and then let it go. And then work on another one and let it go. Because that's something that can really fuel your movement and that vital energy in your drawing. So you know what I think I'm going to talk about today? Since there are no questions, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite art boxes, art supplies. This is Caran is a brand, and this is their it says Gouache. It's a gouache box. I don't this isn't the one that I offer with my online class, because this one's a little harder to find and a little more expensive, and the one I use in my online course is slightly more affordable and more accessible, but they are quite similar. What I love about it is its extreme portability It's dry pans of gouache. What's gouache? Gouache is a watercolor that has an opacity to it, so it's velvety and fabric-like. In fact, sometimes instead of gouache, sometimes I use tempera. In fact, I'm pretty sure this illustration right here I did with tempera cakes, which is like school grade tempera. Well, I don't have them nearby, so I guess I'm not going to show you. This I did with inktense blocks, which are also, these are actually expensive also. But I also recommend them. The reason I don't use watercolor is known for being very sheer. And I like my color to be flat and thick enough that it has, I mean, it's sheer, but it's not, so sheer that it looks like I drew black lines and colored them in with just a thin wash. I like the shapes that I use to paint the garments to have a nice body to themselves. You see what I'm saying? I don't know if that's clear. Watercolors can be very, very thin and very, very transparent. So I like something a little more opaque. So these are easy to find. They're like 40 bucks, and I like it. I got it at Michael's. I like it because it has these two colors. This is a dark, cool brown, and this is like a peachy, beigey color. And with these two, you can mix all kinds of skin tones, which is something that's really important to me. Then you have black and a whole rainbow. So you can pretty much mix whatever you want. The only thing you may need to buy in addition to that is a nice tube of white. And I recommend designer gouache. If you take my online course, Utrecht is the brand where all the art supplies come from. It's a great website discount, Brooklyn made art supplies. All right, USA made. And then I didn't even show you inside here this caran kit. The first time I ever bought it, I bought it at Utrecht in New York City. And I'm embarrassed to show you how beat up my palette is. I'm pretty sure my daughter did that. But do you see how, okay, I really have to clean this up. But do you see how intense the colors are? And that's the thing. You want intense colors. You'll notice that some paint kits do not have this intensity. And you deserve it. And to have really rich, bright color. I also love this kit for the same reasons that I love this kit. I love that brown, gray, yellow, ochre, and black. All these right here, again, I can use to mix any range of skin colors. This kit also comes with a tube of white that comes with it. And although this is a mess, it has, nice palette capability as well. And guess what else? Even the paint tray comes out, and then you have even more palette. Why do I like portable dry paints? Because you can do anything with them. You can, you could sketch at Starbucks. You could sketch on an airplane. I love that. I love the portability of it rather than having palettes and squeezy tubes and having a hard time getting the top off and they dry up and da-da-da. These are already dry. You take them anywhere, and I did most of my best work, in cafes and stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a little tip about how to use gouache. Too bad that's not in my title now, but oh well. Here we go. So I'm going to put this, hang on a second, there seems to be a shadow I can't get rid of. Oh well. All right, I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to tell you the most basic thing that you need to know about how the gouache works. And again, interrupt me at any time if you have your own questions, because I love to answer them. Here's some water. The biggest thing I could tell you about working with gouache is that I always start with puddles. So anytime I'm going to use a color, I start by creating a puddle of water. And then, and the water should be pristine and clean, but I'm like flying by the seat of my pants right now. So here's some water. And why don't I create a skin tone? So what I usually do before I use my paints, I'll wet them first so they melt a little bit. I didn't do that though, but I'm doing it now. So I just wetted this. I'm going to take some of this gray. Don't grind your brush into the paint. It's hard on your brush to do that. Try to use a tapping action to lift pigment off the cakes and then mix them into the water. Now, why would I want gray for skin? I don't want gray for skin. Let me do a little test here though, just to test my color, my opacity, okay, I have a little wash here now. Oh my gosh, a wash. That gives me another idea. Okay, now I'm going to create a skin tone anyway. I'll create a skin tone anyway. So what I'm going to do with that gray is now I'm going to come over to this color is called burnt sienna. You don't need to know the name, but burnt sienna is its own unique thing. You'll always recognize, once you know that color, you know, it's a very, very warm kind of brown. That's why I like to mix gray with it, because it like cools it down a little bit. Let's see, I'm going to tap, tap, tap to pick up more pigment and load it into my puddle, because you see how washy this is? When you use the gouache, the whole point is to get, you know, less washy and a little more rich color. So I'm picking up more pigment, mixing it into my puddle. I'm trying to get a nice tone that I want to use for skin. Now, am I doing an illustration? You know what I'm thinking? I'm using drawing paper right now. That's why this is getting very streaky, because this paper, while it does have it's nicer than sketch paper. It's called drawing paper, but it isn't watercolor paper. Watercolor paper is going to react differently to the gouache. Do I have some? I'm looking around right now to see if I have some nearby. Hang on. I don't see comments right now because I'm looking around for a pad. Okay, I don't. So I'm just gonna tell you that's why it's streaky like this. When you use it on illustration paper or watercolor paper, it's much smoother. You see that? Much smoother. So don't worry about that. And then I think what I'm going to talk about right now is something that people ask all the time. They ask about how to get more movement into their sketches. So if you're drawing fashion, I don't care what size you do. I don't care how, actually I do care how tall or skinny they are, because if they're too tall and skinny, I kind of don't take it as seriously. I think they need to look like humans look. You know, most fashion illustrations are even taller and skinnier than the most extreme models. And I don't believe in that. I believe in the beautiful women we see everywhere all the time. And that's what I mostly support. But what was my point about that? So bear that in mind. And I'm going to start with the head. But people usually ask how to get more movement. And what I urge people to do is to get away from the idea of pure line and to consider, you know, the reason I have them work with gouache early on to do figure sketches is because you can build a whole body so quickly, so much more quickly than you could with a pencil when you use a paintbrush. This is a size 8 round-barreled pointed brush, which is what we use in my course. And you can just build, you know, a whole arm in a stroke using this brush. You can't really do that with a pencil, can you? Right? And the way to get movement is to really look at the angle of the shoulder. And one of the biggest tips I can give you for that is look at each shoulder and imagine you have an endless ruler going, that's like resting on top of her shoulders, and just really pay attention to that angle and how much it isn't a straight horizontal. Like in your mind, compare it to a pure horizontal and then notice how that relationship isn't. You know, if you connect the dots from shoulder to shoulder, instead of just thinking from shoulder to shoulder, think infinitely. What if those lines went on forever? And that's the angle you want to get. So you know it's not, because straight is stable, right? But diagonal is dynamic. So that's my hint for you today. Well, one hint is to find that dynamic relationship. Find it in the limbs too. I'm working from my imagination right now. If I was working from a photo, I would look at what was in the photo. But what you're also going to notice is that when the shoulders go one way, The bust will go the same way. The bottom of the rib cage, same way. These are all like parallel to each other. There are some exceptions. I'll talk about that later in my online course. But thing is, lower body takes on the opposite. And you'll find this in your own body. When you lean your upper body to one side, there's a squeeze here and a stretch there. Your body, in order for you to not tip over, the other side of your body has to reach over to compensate so you don't fall. So the angle of the hip bones, both the high hip bones and the low hip bones, are also diagonal, but they're opposite the rib cage and the shoulder and the bust, that are all going this way. Lower body's all going the other way. And thank goodness this is so. Look at how I can make the whole body part so quickly with the brush. Now you may be saying, yeah, but she's a blob. I can't put clothes on her or anything. Well, in my classes, we definitely go after capturing the silhouette, the movement, and the proportion and dynamics of the body before we start getting into all of the, what do you call it? Details of clothes. Because before you start getting micro detailed and before you start getting all nitpicking about buttons and ears and fingernails and zippers, we want to get the overall, we want to get the macro, the overall, the balance, the action, the movement, the woman, the life. We want that first. Okay? So here's a body. I'm trying to make the figure fuller. And I also going to show you how once you shade the figure, she becomes much thinner. And that's why we don't want to draw her too skinny, because we're always going to shade her to add dimension and form. And if you make her too skinny and then you shade her, she's going to look sickly thin. But if you make her nice and full and then you shade her, she's going to come out looking just wonderful. You know, I mean, we have all body types are accepted, you know, but I really don't encourage the ones that I often see all over the web that are just extremely, as a woman, I look at them, I say, well, what is that? Where did she come from? Fashion is fantasy. Yes. Fashion is exciting. Yes. It's imagination. We want to create maybe some extreme, you know, beauty, but still based off of our reality, not something completely unimaginably unattainable, right? Okay. And then I forgot, oh shoot, I was rushing through that because there was something I really wanted to tell you, and now I forget what it was. I did, without even talking about it, I went and added a frame onto this sketch, and I want you to notice how that adds to the composition of the sketch and looks cool. Another thing I also always want to tell people to do is to date and to sign their stuff. Like if you share in the Fashion Tribalistas group, you should really date your stuff because you're always going to be evolving. And your signature and frame can really become part of the artwork. It's part of the composition of the page, which makes it a lot more interesting. And then just to wrap this up, because I also know my battery is low and I'm not getting questions or anything, so I just want to make it be a nice targeted little lesson, is I added black. I took some black paint and mixed it into my brown, to my skin tone. And I could make it or break it here because I haven't warmed up or anything, but it's okay. I am going to, oh, you know, it's Earth Day too, and I want to say that sketching figures that are realistic and not distorted, to me, is an Earth Day thing. Because sustainability and ethics in fashion all come from, it's all the same story. You know, respecting Mother Earth, respecting Mother Woman, respecting, you know. When we distort the body and make it, you know, take away its natural beauty, you know, what are we really saying there? It's like speaking against nature. So I really believe in celebrating women as they are, and you know how amazing we already are. Fashion should just enhance that. It shouldn't give us a message against ourselves, right? Okay, so here's an example of how shading. What I did was I pretended the light was coming from the right, and I shaded most of the left sides of things. I do recommend shading about half of every shape you've painted to get a really nice 3D look. And you could see how when I added those shadow shapes, which are always, I always use whatever color I had used as a base, and then I just add some black to it. See how that gave her kind of a 3D feeling. I still, like I said, I wasn't drawing from anything, so I don't have any clothes to draw, but I was thinking of putting a little leotard on her. And because she's still wet, I can't add any kind of lines. But one thing I would really encourage you to do, and I know it's really hard and counterintuitive for many of us, is to practice drawing without lines, without a sharp pencil. What I did here today, I used this big loose brush. Although I also want you to notice that this brush goes from thick to very thin, which is why we love, this is a size 8 watercolor brush. You know, it gives you all kinds of variety, and you deserve that. But I'm not working with the fine line. I was working mostly with big strokes that gave me like whole limbs. And then what I can do is, you know, this is one figure, but normally what I'll have you do is work up like 10, so that you could throw away 5 and maybe get 3 that you love. You know, you're bound to have some that you're really not happy with. It's okay. Oh, that's what I was going to tell you that I forgot. I was going to tell you that the reason we love to make these poses in illustrations is because the figure, the mannequin, is as stiff can be. You know, remember how I talked about the opposite angle of the upper body and the lower body? Well, wait, I'm going to clarify that by putting the high hip line kind of back in and the low hip, and showing you the center line, how it curves. Hi, welcome. I was just getting close to wrap up because I also know my battery is kind of low and stuff, but you could always catch the replay. But that mannequin is as stiff can be. So having fashion illustration to accompany our design process really breathes the life into our ideas. What up, what up, what up? Hi, I'm Laura Wolf-Testa. I'm a fashion designer and illustrator and educator. I'm a fashion author. What can I help you with? Do you have some questions? I do know that oh my gosh, my battery actually says 2%. You love my focus points? Thank you. I'm trying to do that more. It's just the floodgates open. I have so much I want to say. No, I don't have a line. I'm totally know everything about design, but I'm very much in the teaching mode and the creation mode. So I'll make a first sample of anything, but the whole business, production, blah, 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 I really want to be helping other people express their art and design.